The lonely millionaire was in line at the supermarket when a single mom said, "Please help me. I promise I'll pay you back when I can." That simple phrase changed their lives forever. The supermarket was quiet that Tuesday afternoon, the kind of quiet that only exists in crowded places where everyone is trapped in their own world. James pushed the cart slowly, his eyes moving mechanically along the shelves. He knew what he needed: skim milk, whole wheat bread, frozen chicken. The same items, in the same order, in the same store, for months. Routine was the only place where he felt safe. It was that, or face the emptiness that had followed him since the divorce, and before that, since the diagnosis: irreversible infertility. 2 doctors, 3 tests, 1 single sentence. It wasn't the only reason for the separation, but it was the one that hurt the most. To have someone tell you with clinical coldness that you can't create life, that's the kind of thing that changes the way you look in the mirror. In the checkout line, he waited silently, observing without meaning to. In front of him, a woman was trying to organize her groceries on the conveyor belt, while a little boy, about 7 years old, held a juice box with both hands, as if it were a trophy. The woman frowned, phone in hand, trying something on her banking app. "I think it didn't go through," she said, her voice soft but tense. "Could you try again, please?" The cashier, impatient, repeated the motion. The machine made the same short, irritating sound. Card declined. "Weird. There should be money. I got paid today," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. The boy, still holding the juice, looked at his mother. He didn't ask anything. He just looked. And in that look, there was something James didn't expect to see in a child. Calm, confidence. As if this wasn't new, and he knew that in the end his mother would figure it out. "Ma'am, I can leave the meat and the milk. I'll just take the basics, okay?" She began separating the items, carefully pulling them off the conveyor, as if each movement hurt a little. The juice, the boy still held. James took a deep breath. It wasn't his business. It wasn't his problem. But before he could stop himself, he was already speaking. "Put it all on mine." The words came out without warning. Direct, almost harsh. Both women, Sarah and the cashier, turned at the same time. The first surprised, the second relieved. "Sir, that's not necessary," Sarah began. "I insist." He looked away as if it were just any purchase. She pressed on. "I promise I'll pay you back. As soon as I fix the issue with the bank, I'll return the money." James nodded, but didn't say much else. He swiped his own card, entered his PIN, and picked up his bag. He was ready to leave and forget. But he didn't forget. Outside, while putting his groceries in the trunk, he caught a glimpse of the woman adjusting the boy's backpack on his shoulders. She was saying something softly, probably explaining what had happened. The boy listened quietly. No drama, just the two of them, together in the world. James closed the trunk and turned to get into his car. And that's when he heard her voice, firm, determined. "Sir, wait just a second." Sarah was walking toward him holding a folded piece of paper. "Here's my name, number, and address. I'll pay you back. I mean it. I don't like owing anyone anything." He looked at the paper, then at her. "It wasn't a debt," he said in a neutral tone. She forced a smile. There was weariness in her eyes, but also an unshakable dignity. Pride, not arrogance. "Even so, it's a matter of honor." The boy at her side stretched out his little hand. "Thank you, mister." James looked at the boy, those big, sober eyes, as if he could see beyond appearances. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ethan. And my mom's name is Sarah." He nodded. "All right, Ethan. Take good care of your mom, okay?" "Always," the boy answered, with a certainty that broke through every defense. Sarah gently pulled her son closer, She turned once more, and this time her smile was real, light, different. "Good afternoon, sir." "James." "Good afternoon, James." They walked away, the bags divided between them. James watched until they turned the corner of the parking lot. Only then did he get into his car, closed the door carefully, and sat there in silence, staring at the steering wheel. He had come for bread, milk, and chicken. He left with something stirring inside, something small but impossible to ignore. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that maybe, just maybe, something was about to change. The supermarket parking lot was almost empty when Sarah reappeared. James was already in the car, ready to leave, when he heard a light knock on the window. He turned his head. It was her, with her son beside her and the bags now looking even heavier. "Sorry to bother you again," Sarah began, a little uneasy. "But my ride app canceled 3 times, and I've got him with me, you know." She pointed subtly at Ethan. James looked at the boy, who smiled with the same calmness as before. He hesitated. He wasn't the kind of guy who gave rides. He never had been. But he gestured for them to get in. Ethan climbed in first, adjusting his backpack on his lap, followed by Sarah, who closed the door carefully. "You don't need to take me all the way to the door. Dropping us off on the avenue already helps a lot," she said quickly, as if trying to make things easier. "I'll take you home," James replied, starting the engine. Silence filled the car for the first few minutes. Sarah fiddled with her phone, maybe out of nerves. Ethan looked out the window, watching the streetlights as if they were something new. James kept his eyes on the road, hands firm on the wheel. The city slid by slowly, its sounds muffled by the car's insulation. Then came the question. "Do you have kids?" Ethan blurted out of nowhere without a filter. James felt his shoulders tense. He didn't answer right away. "No, never did," he said, and before the boy could ask why, he added, "Didn't want to." He lied. He felt the lie right there, echoing in his chest. His voice had sounded harsher than he intended. Sarah glanced at him through the rearview mirror, but said nothing. Ethan was thoughtful for a few seconds. Then he went back to watching the streetlights. "My dad didn't want to either," he said in an almost casual tone. Sarah squeezed her son's shoulder silently. James swallowed hard. They turned right, onto a street of attached houses, some with rusted gates, others freshly painted. The neighborhood was modest, but alive. Children played with a dog, and an elderly woman watered plants in a makeshift pet bottle pot. They stopped in front of a one-story house with a white gate and herb pots on the window ledge. "Here's fine," Sarah said, eager to unbuckle and thank him at the same time. "That was a huge help. Really, I owe you 2 now." James just nodded but didn't turn off the car. Ethan got out first. His mother followed right after, picking up the bags. Before she closed the door, she turned back again. "Next week I'll be able to pay you back, I promise." He looked at her for a moment, then said, "You owe me a coffee." Sarah frowned, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Instead of paying me back, invite me for a coffee. One of these days." There was a pause, long enough for James to regret saying it. But then she smiled, a small, sideways smile, but genuine. "Fair enough." She closed the door and walked to the gate with Ethan. James stayed in the car for a few seconds, watching. The house's facade was simple, but alive. A clothesline with children's clothes swayed in the yard. The window was open, clean curtains fluttering. Everything neat, carefully tended. Love in small details. Ethan helped his mother open the gate. Before going in, he turned, saw James was still there, and gave him a quick wave. James waved back, almost without thinking. That night, while heating up chicken in the microwave and eating alone in front of the TV, James found himself replaying the boy's question. "Do you have kids?" And the next sentence, "My dad didn't want to either." Those words wouldn't leave his mind. Nor would Sarah's eyes. Nor that clothesline, so ordinary, yet so full of life. It had just been a ride. But something, deep down, told him it wouldn't end there. James was finishing his second espresso of the day when he saw a shadow approach the corner table at the back of the coffee shop where he usually worked on slower afternoons. He looked up, curious, and was caught off guard. Sarah. "Found you," she said, like someone who had just solved a puzzle. He frowned, confused. She smiled, pulling out the chair before he even thought to invite her. "Remember the tag on your grocery bag? It had your company's name. I Googled it. The rest was just walking 2 blocks." James didn't know whether to smile, complain, or wonder why that actually made him feel glad. He chose silence. "Brought this." She placed a small envelope on the table. "The money for the groceries. With interest. Courtesy of a guilty conscience." He looked at the envelope, then at her. "I told you, a coffee. Which is exactly what I'm about to order." Sarah waved to the waitress. The silence between them was less tense than it had been in the car. He could feel it. Something had shifted. Sarah seemed lighter, or maybe he was the one less locked up. "Do you always come here?" she asked after placing her order. "When I need to work outside the house. I'm an IT consultant, freelancer, better than facing traffic every day. And the coffee's good here. Strong and honest, like me." Sarah laughed softly. "I work nights, nursing assistant, at the municipal hospital, shifts until dawn." "That explains how you handle pressure. That day at the supermarket, you seemed calm, even with the world crashing down." She shrugged. "When you see people fighting for their lives every night, you learn not to freak out over a maxed-out card." The waitress arrived with the coffees. Sarah stirred in the sugar delicately. "And Ethan?" James asked. "With my neighbor? We trade favors. I watch her daughter when I can. She stays with him during my shifts. He's special. Too serious for his age. Yeah, he's seen more than he should have. But he's still sweet. Loves dinosaurs and banana pancakes." James smiled at that. He didn't notice, but Sarah did. The conversation lasted longer than either expected. It began with trivialities, slid into memories. Nothing too deep. But there was tension, a kind of silent recognition. 2 survivors exchanging signals. The week went by, and the meetings repeated themselves. Once at the park, when Ethan ran up shouting, "The supermarket guy," and the 3 of them ended up sitting on the grass eating popcorn. Another time at a craft fair, where Sarah sold handmade bracelets on her days off. James showed up unplanned, or so he said. Over time, Ethan began grabbing James's arm naturally, and James let him. Started to like it. "Are you coming again?" the boy asked one night as James said goodbye. "If I'm invited." "Then you're invited forever." Sarah, behind him, heard it. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. That same night, back at home, James was at his computer when a message came through. A number far too familiar to ignore. "Hi, we need to talk. I'm getting married in November. I wanted you to hear it from me." It was from his ex-wife. He stared at the screen. Didn't reply. An hour later, another message. "We're expecting twins. Funny, right?" Funny wasn't the right word. James felt the sharp blow of those words. He took a deep breath, deleted the messages, but they lingered anyway. Twins, a new marriage, a new life. And him. Where? With who? The weight hit like a punch. The memory of the clinic, the white room, the doctor explaining with cold detachment the possibilities he didn't have. The guilt he carried, even though he didn't deserve it. But now something was different, because out of nowhere another face appeared in his mind. Ethan, laughing, gap-toothed, holding a cup of grape juice. and Sarah standing behind him, twirling a strand of hair while talking to someone at the fair. That image hit harder than the news about the twins. Days later, back at the cafe, Sarah showed up again, Ethan in tow. "Are we interrupting the important man at work?" she teased. "The important man's off today," James answered, closing his laptop. Ethan climbed into the chair like he was coming home. "I'm hungry. Do they have banana pancakes here?" "We'll figure something out," James said. Sarah looked at him a second longer than usual. "Thanks for being around." He pretended not to hear, but he did, and deep down, even if he didn't admit it, he had been waiting for her to say that. The sound of her phone's ringtone pulled Sarah out of the light sleep she was trying to squeeze in between shifts. The screen flashed with the school's name. Her heart sped up before she even answered. "Miss Sarah, Ethan has a fever. He looks very weak. Can we release him?" Half an hour later, she was already at the school, her son leaning against her lap in the back seat of a rideshare car, hot, trembling, sunken eyes. The cough came in waves, dry and rasping like he was swallowing stones. At the public clinic, the line stretched around the corner. The air was heavy. Children crying, a man vomiting into a plastic bag. "Emergency only if there's imminent risk of life," the receptionist said. She insisted, showed them Ethan's condition, asked for priority, heard promises of a few minutes, too many minutes. Outside, sitting on a concrete bench with Ethan limp in her arms, Sarah tried to stay calm. She called her neighbor to say she wouldn't be back anytime soon. And on impulse, or maybe on faith, she sent a short message. "Ethan's sick, can't get seen. I'm at the Santos Dumont Clinic." James's reply came 2 minutes later. "I'm coming." 20 minutes after that, he appeared. Black t-shirt, messy hair, saying nothing. He just looked at the boy, then at her. "Get in the car." "James, Get in." She didn't argue. The drive to the private hospital was fast. James drove like someone who had done it 1,000 times, though the tight jaw and fixed eyes on the road said otherwise. When they arrived, he got out first, lifted Ethan in his arms, far too light, and strode to the front desk. "Pediatric emergency. No insurance. Bill everything," he said, not even glancing at the price board. Sarah, beside him, tried to protest, but the nurse was already bringing a wheelchair. Ethan was taken straight in for evaluation. They stayed outside. "I'll pay you back," she said. "Shut up, Sarah," he replied quietly. No anger, just exhaustion. "Just stay here." Ethan was admitted with pneumonia. His oxygen saturation was low, his lungs congested. He needed IV antibiotics and continuous oxygen. By the second night, Sarah had to return to her shift. Money couldn't stop. James stayed. In the hospital room, he adjusted the pillow, wiped Ethan's forehead with a damp cloth, turned on a cartoon at the lowest volume. "Uncle James," the boy murmured, voice hoarse. James felt the name hit differently. It hurt and healed all at once. "I'm here, champ. Will you stay with me? Until you get tired of me." Ethan tried to smile but coughed instead. James held his hand and stayed there. No phone, no distractions, just him and that boy, and that room. On the third night, Ethan suddenly worsened. The monitor beeped. His oxygen dropped from 94 to 86 in less than a minute. The cough turned into gasps for air. Ethan's wide eyes searching his. Panic. "Nurse!" James shouted. The team rushed in. Oxygen mask, IV line, technical words flying. James was pushed into the corner. He wanted to do something, anything, but all he could think of was the same feeling he'd had years earlier, sitting in another doctor's office, hearing permanent infertility. The same helplessness, the same knot in his stomach, the same urge to scream. But this time was different, because now there was a boy fighting to breathe. A boy who called him Uncle James. A boy who trusted him to stay. And he did. He stayed when the doctors said it was going to be a tough night. He stayed when Sarah arrived at 5 in the morning, dark circles under her eyes, finding him dozing in the armchair, still holding Ethan's hand. "You slept here?" she whispered, surprised. "Of course," he said, like it was obvious, like there had been any other choice. Sarah sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. They just looked at the boy, now sleeping with steady oxygen and fever under control. "Thank you, James." He didn't answer. He just kept holding Ethan's hand. The next morning, the doctor walked in smiling. "He's past the worst. Now it's recovery." Sarah cried quietly. James closed his eyes and let out the breath he felt he'd been holding since the first cough. Ethan woke up shortly after, still weak but smiling with his eyes. "Uncle James, can I have banana pancakes?" James laughed, choked up. "We'll make a truckload of pancakes, but only when the doctor says so." The boy smiled. In that hospital room, with no grand gestures, no rehearsed words, something was sealed. He wasn't a father, but he was there, and that was enough. Ethan slept peacefully. The heart monitor beeped slowly, steadily, like a metronome of relief. The fever had broken. His breathing was returning to normal, and his appetite was beginning to stir again. The worst had passed. James, sitting in the armchair beside the bed, felt a tiredness that came from the soul, but he didn't complain. There was a strange peace there, as if, for the first time in years, he had done something that truly mattered. Sarah was leaning back on the small couch in the room, legs folded, head resting on his shoulder. She had drifted off without realizing it, after more than 36 hours awake. Her breathing was calm, warm, familiar. He looked at the two of them, mother and son, and wished he could freeze that moment. That hospital room, with its yellowish light, thin sheets, and antiseptic smell, felt more like home than his apartment had ever been. The next morning, the doctor discharged Ethan. Precautions were still necessary, but he could go home. "Yay, pancakes!" the boy said, throwing his arms up. Sarah laughed. James, too. That afternoon, already out of the hospital, the three of them went to the park. A short outing, just so Ethan could see people, sunlight, feel that he was back in the world. He ran only a little, played carefully, but smiled like he'd forgotten the illness altogether. James and Sarah sat on a bench, watching. "He bounced back quickly," she said. "Because he's got a mom who knows what she's doing," James replied. She glanced at him sideways, without answering. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence full of questions neither of them had the courage to voice yet. "Can I tell you something?" he said at last. "Of course." James rubbed the back of his neck, took a deep breath. "I'm sterile." The word hung between them, heavy. He didn't look at her right away. Continued, "I found out a few years ago. Took tests, retook them. Genetic. No chance. At the time, my wife said it wasn't the end of the world. But it was. At least for us." Sarah watched him, attentive but without pity, without shock. "I thought it defined me, that I couldn't be a father, that I didn't deserve to be, like I was defective from the factory." "James," she began, but he raised his hand asking to finish. "This week, with Ethan, I felt things I hadn't felt in a long time. Fear, anger, guilt, but also love. A love that scared me, that changed me." Finally, he turned and met her eyes. "I don't know what this means to you, but for me, it was real." Sarah didn't answer right away. She just reached out and placed her hand over his. "Being a father isn't just about creating life. It's what you did this week. It's showing up, staying, loving. That has nothing to do with blood tests." He closed his eyes for a second, absorbing it. When he opened them, Sarah was still there, steady, present. Ahead of them, Ethan was blowing soap bubbles, bursting in the air like tiny lights. James looked at her again, deeper this time. Sarah held his gaze, and then, in a small, inevitable gesture, he leaned closer. The kiss was gentle, a lingering touch, silent, full of everything they hadn't said. There was no rush, no fireworks, only truth. When they pulled back, neither smiled. It was more than that. It was the beginning of something that didn't need to be spoken aloud. That night back home, James received a message. It was from Sarah. "I'm here if you want to talk." He replied, "I don't want to talk. I want to keep staying." She sent a laughing emoji, then another. "Then stay." And he did. The first time Ethan called James Dad was in the line for the playground. "Dad, push me higher this time?" It came so naturally that no one reacted at first. James simply answered, "High, but safe." As if it had always been that way. Sarah heard from a distance. She smiled, didn't correct him. In that moment, none of the three realized that the shift had already happened, that it was no longer the beginning of something. It was the middle. It was now. Months passed. Everyday life settled in with its small rituals. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, board games on Wednesdays, Sunday afternoon naps in the living room. James shared the routine with Sarah with a care he had never shown even to himself. He was still methodical. But now there was life between the schedules. Ethan filled the silences. Sarah, the spaces. Everything worked, almost effortlessly, until she brought a new name to the table. "I met a little girl at the shelter," Sarah said one night while washing the dishes. "Olivia, 4 years old, nobody visits, nobody asks about her." James, facing away, stopped chopping the vegetables. "And you?" I asked. She dried her hands, turned, and leaned against the sink. "It's not loneliness, Ale, not impulse. It's a calling." He sat at the table, stayed silent for long seconds, then said, "What if I can't handle it? What if it's too much?" "You handled Ethan, and me, and everything I threw at you without warning, and you stayed. But what if I can't love the same way?" Sarah stepped closer, knelt in front of him. "Love doesn't divide, James. It multiplies." A week later, he went with her to the shelter. Olivia was playing alone with an old puzzle, pieces missing. When she looked up, she saw Sarah and ran straight into her arms. James stood still, watching. Then Olivia looked at him with wide, serious eyes. No fear, no filter. "Are you the coffee man?" she asked. He frowned, confused. "She remembers you. She was at the shelter that day when you dropped me off for work and I stopped by first to see her," Sarah explained. James smiled, surprised. "Yeah, that's me." Olivia walked over slowly, rested her head against his leg, and stayed there. And that was when he knew. The process wasn't quick. The bureaucracy was brutal, as always, but they faced it together, filled out forms, endured home visits, sat through interviews with the social worker. Ethan was the first to accept it fully. "Can we make pancakes with her too?" he asked. "Of course," James answered. "Then she's my sister." Just like that. On the day they signed the adoption papers, Sarah cried in sobs. James held her tightly, but inside, something was breaking loose. It wasn't sadness, it was release. For so long, he had believed he was incapable of being a father. Now he had 2 children, one by choice, the other by fate, both by love. Weeks later, on a late afternoon in the park, the 4 of them walked together. Ethan and Olivia ran ahead playing tag. Sarah and James strolled behind, slowly, watching the scene like people proud to witness their own lives. On a wooden bench beneath a tree, he motioned for them to stop. Sarah sat. He did too. He took a small box from his pocket and handed it to her. No suspense, no rehearsed speech. She opened it. A simple gold ring, 2 letters engraved inside, E and O. "There are kids," he said. She looked at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Sarah, this was the best debt anyone's ever given me." She laughed through wet eyes. "I'll pay you with my whole life." The kiss came unhurried, tasting of truth, of home, of us. In the background, Ethan shouted, "Mom! Olivia stole my bubble wand!" "It's mine! I found it!" Olivia shot back. Sarah stood. James, too. They walked toward the children, fingers still intertwined. It was the end of a story that had begun by chance, with a simple gesture at a supermarket checkout. And the beginning of a family. Improbable. Improbable like everything that's real. No plan, no blood, but love. Always love. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. What touched you the most? James's love, Sarah's strength, or Ethan's purity? Your like and subscription are the simplest way to say that stories like this deserve to keep being told.